Romeo, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How's it going?
It's going really well.
Great.
I'm just a bit disappointed. There's absolutely no way I can upstage that last guy. He was comedy
Please
gold.
don't.
Yeah, bring it back down
comedy
to
gold.
reality.
Also, I do hear that joke a lot. Thank you, Russell.
I'm sorry.
I knew I was going to get it from you.
I always, I see an unusual name and I'm like, oh, I got a joke. And then you're the one on the line who has to live with that name. So
That's
I
all
take
right.
it back.
It's okay. Well, my question today is it's definitely much more history based. And that's I feel like Christianity and pretty much all religions in general get a really bad rap for things that happened in the past, like the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades. And I feel like people sort of put these situations in a vacuum where they don't happen for any other reason other than religion. And while they do have some influence on a personal level, I feel like things like the Crusades, they didn't happen entirely because the Catholic Church called a call to action to go retake Jerusalem.
Sure.
They happened for a lot of other reasons. Same with the Spanish Inquisition. The Moroccans had just been kicked out of Spain, Especially in the Middle East, I feel like people have this sort of vision that people lived in a religiously owned dark age that had no science and no culture. I feel like there's a lot of myths behind that, and I wanted to know what you guys thought about that, because I know that the church for hundreds of years was the reason why all pretty much scientific progress was funded, and people like Copernicus and during the scientific revolution, they were all funded by the Catholic Church.
I think it is going a little bit far to say that the church is the only reason why those things were funded, because they were funded because there was this general move towards scientific inquiry, and the church just happened to be this giant parasite that was latched on to social organizations. Now, there are benefits to social organizations, and the fact that the church happened to be a place where a whole lot of money was consolidated in one place put them in a position of funding and supporting not only scientific research, but the arts and, fantastic architecture and music and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that I would credit the church itself with being the driving motive behind those scientific discoveries. Lynnea, would you disagree with what I said?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things to touch on, actually. One thing is that, even something terrible or stupid can come up with something good. So China invented porcelain way before Europe, but Europe actually managed to discover porcelain by itself because they had alchemists who were trying to find how to turn lead into gold. And a guy who was researching this just happened to kind of stumble onto, when I dropped this clay thing that I've been working on into water, it didn't break, and that was cool. And so so they managed to make an advancement from that, which is great, but maybe if you hadn't been trying to put all your effort into turning lead into gold, we would have come up with that way earlier. We would have had different, better advancements, like medical stuff or something like that. I will definitely say that it's a myth that the Dark Ages were a time of, anti-science and backsliding, because there were some advancements, and that's definitely great.
Yeah, I agree.
And that was a positive thing that came out of it. And then finally, back to your original point of saying that a lot of people now kind of point to the Crusades as a negative thing that Christianity did. I think that a main point of that is not that Christianity did this in a vacuum, although it can be easy to leap to that or to simplify to that. But that if Christianity as a religion was a true thing, and there was definitely this commandment, thou shalt not murder, and people believed that and took it at face value and honored that, the Crusades would not have happened, because it would have been a giant murder fest, and they would have recognized that, and they would have approached something maybe like the Crusades more peacefully, maybe try to create like a European Union or something like that,
right.
instead of this violent bloodbath. But instead, religion was used to justify and kind of ease doubts about maybe it's not such a great idea to go over and just ransack and kill people. They kind of said, no, this is fine because we're ordained by God, and that kind of helped smooth things over. And so that's kind of the thing that people, I think, should or ideally would be pointing to say, here's what's kind of messed up about the Crusades. And then that actually happened too with kind of Bush's invasion of Iraq, because
I was going to bring that up also.
All right, well, if you would like, you can talk about it.
Well, I was actually going to say first that the attacks of 9/11 2001, there are a lot of atheists who want to really oversimplify the idea of what caused that and just say, oh, it was Islam 100%, and and that's the reason why it happened, full stop. But that ignores a lot of genuine social issues in the region about previous bombing campaigns and a lot of social issues that kept people poor and desperate. Now, having said that, on the other side, there are a lot of people who completely dismiss the role of Islam in the 9/11 attacks and say, oh, we should only be looking to these social issues and we should only think about how the United States mistreated that region or something, and I think both of those extremes miss the point, because you need a combination of social situations combined with fanatical beliefs to completely explain that particular event. And I think that it wouldn't be fair to lay most atrocities from history solely at the feet of religion and dismiss all other causes. But I think it is fair to say that that this religious zeal, where basically I see faith as a way of focusing people on this idea that what they already believe is definitely true and completely backed up by an all-powerful and perfectly good force. And therefore, anything they decide to do, no matter how horrific it may look from the outside, is just and moral. That faith in itself is a problem, which can spark things that are already volatile in that way.
I totally agree with you guys on pretty much everything you just said. I'm definitely not a revisionist historian in the idea that I think the church only did good or that it had nothing to do with the Crusades. But I guess my question is really, I feel like people underestimate humanity's skill at justifying their want to kill a bunch of people for their own gain.
Oh no, I think there are lots of reasons.
The Crusades were going to happen whether or not Christianity.
I don't know
ever
that you
existed.
can prove that.
I feel like it's, you can't really point to it as this force of good or this force of evil in this historical context. I'm like, if you look at the church at its fundamental basics at the time period, especially during the Enlightenment and the I forgot the term.
Renaissance?
The Reformation,
okay.
I guess. If you look at it back then, it's very human in all of its flaws.
Of course.
You have indulgences with greed. We've already had gay poets.
I don't know if I agree with you. I don't know if I agree with you that if you removed religion from the picture, that you would definitely still have had the Crusades. Might have been, but I don't think there's any way to test that hypothesis.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying a lot of things within the Crusades happened regardless of Christianity or not. Look at the Venetians' attack on Constantinople. They basically slaughtered just a bunch of Christians anyway, just for money. It really, I feel like it has a lot less to do with it than people really think about.
Well, certainly there's a religious aspect of the of the church, but there's also a pretty big financial aspect of the church, because you have this system that pools all this money and takes it all it kind of unquestioned, and so that's kind of part of the situation. So if you remove this this really powerful figure that has all of this money kind of to burn, I don't know if you could have financed that kind of war. Like maybe if the wealth had been more spread out, that would have made people less, eager to go out and raid and pillage.
What I'm saying though is I feel like people kind of don't think of it as, we would have found another way to go and stop these people from claiming a land that was ours. Because the reason, the Crusades happened because Jerusalem got taken over by the Turks, basically, the Turkomans. We would have gone in there to fight them anyway. Church was just used as a calling card for the common people. I usually look at it on a much more personal level for why people went over there to fight for themselves.
How
it was
can
definitely Christian.
How can you have a personal level that doesn't include these large, sweeping beliefs that people have about the nature of the way the universe works? I mean, I don't deny that it is personal, but I don't think you can discount the amount of influence that big an idea has on people.
Yeah, I agree with you guys with that.
And I'm saying even if it wasn't a personal thing, like the fact that there was this income disparity, which was partially perpetuated by the church, certainly didn't help. It didn't give people options,
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways that religions can get tangled up in other like social and economic issues, like a lot of the history of the persecution of the Jews at that time was basically based around the fact that Jews were not allowed to hold certain jobs that in a lot of parts of Europe that the Christians supported, and that's why they wound up being things like moneylenders, because those jobs were distasteful according to the doctrines of Christianity. I'm just saying that is one of the ways in which the idea of religion as sort of an identifying tribal thing is wrapped up in the way that socioeconomic status shakes out in the end.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you guys. One last thing I wanted to point out, and that's if anybody ever uses that the only reason morality exists is because of Christianity argument against you guys, please just bring up China. Please. Just
I have.
The most advanced country for hundreds of years, and Christianity came there very late.
Yeah, so there are records of specific laws which I've read before in some of my talks, or if I think I might have written them in and then deleted them because they were too much of a tangent. But there are plenty of laws against killing and stealing in ancient China that predate the Ten Commandments by, I forget, hundreds or thousands of years.
And that's why they got porcelain earlier.
That is true.
Yeah, they're like, well, the only reason that, we don't want to kill people and take all their stuff is because of God.
Right.
Yeah, or honor if you're a Confucian or anybody else on the earth who has multiple other reasons to not just kill people willy-nilly.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, you guys.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's queue up Carl in South Africa. Now, so we are just about... Oh, wait. Well, we are just about to be at the hour and a half mark, which the hour mark, which in the old studio would have meant the show's going to wrap up no matter what we want. Here it means let's stop taking new callers and just get to the last 3 callers on the list, however long that takes, if that's okay with you.
Okay, sure.
What were you going to say?
No, I forgot.
I keep doing that.
Yeah. Gosh. So something else I wanted to say was that, you know, kind of if you're in this position where you do believe you're being favored by God, you kind of have this image of, well, shouldn't there be some manifestation of that favor? Like, shouldn't I be extra wealthy, or shouldn't I have better health, or more stuff, or anything like that? And it's kind of disappointing, I would think, when you're not actually doing that great, but you're supposed to be, you know, God's favorite, and you're doing everything right. So I think that there's kind of this justification that goes on of, well, how do I get my favored stuff? How do I get the stuff that I'm entitled to? Oh, I got to take it from the heathens. So that certainly doesn't help, I don't think. That idea of they don't deserve it, but I do, because I'm supposed to be the favored one, and God's too busy to sort it out, so I'll just do it myself.